We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
Always, it is my pleasure to be here. It's Saturday night. We're supposedly in the land of the free and the home of the brave, so here we go. But we are worldwide on the Republic Broadcasting Network, and I truly appreciate the fact that you tune in each time when you do. You can find me on Facebook. Follow me around on Facebook, on X, and Instagram. It's at Toward Anarchy. Wherever you find me, please give that like. Just it takes 2 seconds to click that like button, that heart button, whatever it is, that thumbs up, whatever the thing looks like. It just lets me know that you're there and that you care. I truly appreciate it. I really do. You can follow along at towardanarchy.com. As always, that's where it all begins for me. I try each week when I put the stuff together for the show, I try to just put together a little package for you, and that way you can kind of get a sense of where I'm coming from. Because it's one thing to listen to somebody, it's another thing to sort of follow along on what they're seeing and what they're looking at. That's why it's such a fun thing to add after all these years of doing these kinds of things, having these conversations, running a radio show of one sort or another, to have added some video. And it's great that you can find me on Rumble and YouTube, and you can catch the video version and you can actually see what I look like. But the alternative to that, and which I've always done, as long as there have been websites, there's been something like this that I've had going on that I could point you to and say, hey, that's where my mind is at. Look at what I'm working on. Look at the things that I'm reading. Look at the things that I'm enjoying. And if you have any question about where it is that I got, it's right there. It's just right there. It's episode 2520 at towardanarchy.com. And you'll see, man, the links, the great, fantastic quotes. This is a terrific quote this week. Stop saying you didn't vote for this. If you voted for this, you voted for government, and you got it good. Who said that? That's right. It was me. I said that, and it's absolutely true. It's because I'll go around the social media, right? And I'm looking at people. I'm not necessarily jumping in and contributing. I do. I don't just sit there and watch it all pass by me. I oftentimes have something to say, and it's usually just a fairly straightforward statement that you couldn't confuse. It's usually not any kind of an attack or direct statement at the individual speaking, but sometimes it is, because sometimes they're just dumb. Sometimes the things that people are saying and commenting on are just so dumb, and they have to be called out for it. They really do, or at least I feel the need to at the time to do it. But I don't spend as much time doing that as I just spend looking. I just watch. I read. I see what people are thinking to get an idea of where their heads are at. You see, they don't necessarily have a website where they can go and collect all these things over years, and you can say, oh, well, this is kind of who the guy was. You get a sense of it, right? No, they have their social media, and obviously I'm not in contact with them. They don't live in my neighborhood necessarily, or maybe they do. In a lot of cases, they do, because I do spend my I find myself spending more time looking at local things than other things, because I'm interested in what the people are hearing around me, so that I can gauge how they're going to respond and how they're going to react around me when I go outside into the world. What am I expecting when I have to go to Walmart, or I have to go open up the store and start taking customers and start serving people, and where are their heads at? What are they thinking? What is the big news of the day? What are they going to be potentially talking about, thinking about? What's on their mind? And just because it's part of who I am, but also because it's part of my job. It's what I need to do to know what's going on in the world, and to be able to get a sense of who a person is in a pretty short amount of time, to help point them to the things that they may be interested in terms of reading inside the store, reading the comic books that we sell, and just trying to find out what it is, because you'd be surprised how many times over the years of doing this where I have suggested a type of a book or a storyline that either initially on the surface it appears that it's going to be one thing. This is why we go through some of the links and things that we do, going at them blind, as it were. It's the reaction to these things, and people they'll be open to it initially, but then either something in it changes, it's not what it appeared to be, it's not what the story they thought it was going to be. It's that you can't judge a book by its cover kind of thing, and you really, in the case of comic books, cannot judge a comic book by its cover, especially the stuff that most people buy, the superhero stuff. The covers so often don't reflect what's in the book, because for one, they do so many of the different covers that to give all these other artists and people an opportunity to participate in these things. But of course, also they're trying to sell them. But there's nothing wrong with that. It bothers me that there are people that find that there's a problem with that, with the multiple covers and things like that. It can be frustrating to keep up with if you're a collector, or if you're somebody who is trying to make money on comic books, even somebody like myself who's just trying to sell them at the retail level and not necessarily trying to invest in them for the future. In a larger sense I am, but not in an individual sense, in an individual collecting sense. And that's the people that get frustrated about it, more so than the readers and the people who enjoy the comic books. Because the people who read the comic books and who enjoy the art, that aren't in it for the money over everything, and those people, they're happy to be able to have different covers to choose from. They're happy to have their artists on a book that artist may never get a chance to otherwise draw for, because there are so many other people in line, and so many other there's only just so many major titles and characters out there, and there's only just going to be so many people that are ever able to access those characters and draw them and write stories for them. And that's the creators, the creators that are in it for creating great stories and the love of the art, are in it to do just that, to be able to write a Batman story, to be able to draw Wolverine professionally, and to have people like it and enjoy it, because it's about paying respect to the artistic aspects of it all, and being a part of that popular thing. It's all wrapped up in one. It all comes together as one package. But the best of them, the best readers and the best creators of these things have no problem with multiple covers when it's not just a clear attempt at a money grab. There are there are any number of those. Every time a book hits 25 or 50 or 75 or 100, obviously number one, any of those, man, they got to capitalize on them. They just run right out there and they do a million covers of them. It's just crazy how many covers they'll do, and that's a bit just out of control and just a bit silly, but it still serves the same purpose. It still serves ultimately that purpose of here's the creative works and here are the people that do them, and this is your chance to support those people in that. And that, that's democratically how the spending your dollar vote works, the thing that we talk about all the time in just putting your money where your mouth is. If you don't like something, put your money in the opposite of it, whatever. When the creators, when the publishers see that a certain artist has an appeal and that their covers sell, and that it's obvious that the reason those covers sold is because of that artist gets more work, that artist gets more jobs, that artist gets a chance to create more things and put out more things for the people who enjoyed them and put them on the map ultimately to be able to create more and to collect more of their works. It's fantastic. It's a beautiful, wonderful circle. It's one of the true examples of what it is that we do when we're talking about supporting each other in a free and open market space, because if you put out all those covers of the same book and the people choose this cover over all of those other covers, there's a reason that they do that. There's a reason that that's happening. There's some appeal, and it's a very true example of that putting your money where your mouth is, expressing that voting with your dollars and choosing the things that you like. And it's proof that it can be done. And it's also proof that while it can be done, it's never going to be perfect. Not everybody's going to be happy with it, but they're happiest with it when they have the most options to choose from, when they're not limited, when they're not controlled, when somebody's not forcing them in one direction or another. It's a great analogy, right? It takes me a while to get there, to bring it together for you sometimes, but it's true. It's one of the reasons that I really truly enjoy owning a comic book shop and being a comic book collector and seller, is because the reality of what collectibles are in terms of people making a conscious effort to buy the things that they want, that they enjoy, that they care for, and to support those people who create those things. It's an amazing thing. It's a wonderful thing, and you would be lucky if you could experience it. And you don't get to it. You can experience it in almost any sort of retail situation. But to experience it on a raw level, because it's not the same as McDonald's. You go to McDonald's for two reasons: because they have food and because you don't want to cook dinner. That's it. That's why you go to McDonald's, and you have to eat. But you don't go to the comic book shop for any of those reasons. You don't have to go to the comic book shop. Maybe you do. Maybe you have to be entertained. Maybe you have to participate in these things. You have to know the next episode. But no, truly, there's nothing. You don't have to come to a comic book shop. And so the people make their choice every single day. And it's all this show is about. It's all Anarchy's about. It's all voluntarism is about. It's all these things wrapped up in one beautiful little package. And on top of it, everybody needs to read. Everybody needs to experience these different stories and these different worlds. And so that's where my headspace is at right now. It's where it's been at for a while. It's what has me doing the full show today, because I was just doing other things, and I screwed up at some point and misbooked things and moved somebody and didn't put somebody into a slot I moved somebody out of. And so now I get to do the show by myself today. But that's perfectly fine, because I'm always prepared to do that. And I've been wanting to talk to you about a couple of things that are going on, and I've hinted at them over the weeks and the little bit of time that we get in between guests talking to each other, talking with each other. Okay, me talking at you, but today is one of those days where we'll be able to get into so many more of them and really nail down some of my thoughts on some of the things that are going on. And some of those things have changed within the last 24, 48 hours. I guess the last 24 hours or so has been really crazy, because all of a sudden Donald Trump and Elon Musk have broken up. The marriage, the bromance, it's over, and they're trading jabs at each other. And so this has changed everything that's kind of going on right now, and it says something about what the future is, and it says something about Elon Musk, and it says something about Donald Trump. I don't know if we haven't already said all these things about them, but maybe we'll come back through some of them. First, do me a big favor and support the network. Support Republic Broadcasting. republicbroadcasting.org. Click on the donate button there. It's just this little sort of yellow-orange button over on the left-hand side. Just a couple of clicks after that, and you are making a one-time donation or a regular donation in any amount, and whatever it is, it's all appreciated, and it all goes directly to running the network and paying for the internet bill and paying for the equipment and the computers and trying to feed those poor, skinny producers. If you don't do the button thing, if you don't do the website thing, and if you just prefer that personal touch, you can always call 1-800-724-2719 extension 3 and talk to somebody directly, or just send that check or money order to RBN 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas 78664. We can't run the network without you. You are how the network stays on the air. You are how I get to do this every weekend for 2 hours, and all the other people. And so when I ask you to support the network, to continue supporting the network, I do not do it selfishly, and it is a fact. It's very clear and obvious these days that you don't have to have the support of a big network to do something like what I do. And when I do it for myself, it doubles that unnecessary need, except that it doesn't for me as getting to be a part of the network. It's amazing that I get to be a part of all of these different conversations and these people who are willing to have the conversations, and that's what Republic Broadcasting Network has been all about. And you don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with anyone in particular across the network or anyone at all across the network. We're just having the conversation, and you have made it possible all these years. So thank you so much for doing it, and know that we do it because of you, and that we do it because we can, and that it's amazing that it's another example of another pure example of supporting something that you appreciate by using those dollars to cast your vote, as it were, a real true vote in suggesting that you value what you listen to, what you hear across the Republic Broadcasting Network. So it's just amazing, and thank you so much for doing it. Of course, you can also visit shoprbn.com. That's the win-win situation. There's all these wonderful products up there. There's Patriot Apparel, and there's emergency radios, and there's water filters, the ProPure water filters, and so much more up there. It's really great, and of course, it's the win-win. You support the advertisers continue to advertise across the network. We get to continue to have these conversations, and you get to continue to show us how much you appreciate us having these conversations by supporting us. So really, truly, thank you for supporting the network, and tune in this Thursday. That's right. Yep, every Thursday right now. I don't know how many more episodes we have in the test run, and I don't know where it'll go from there. I don't think I'm available at that time period every week. Maybe on Wednesdays. Maybe if we moved it. I'm just thinking out loud in case you're wondering, because I hadn't really considered this. But I've been hosting the Your Health in Mind show live Thursday afternoons, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, right here on the Republic Broadcasting Network, along with Dr. Dean Lloyd. He's really the guy. I just kind of make sure that somebody recognizes that there's a call and that Dr. Lloyd just doesn't keep going on and on about these amazing things and experiences as he's had all over. You know how it is. I've had him on the show once a month for years, and we still have plenty to talk about all the time. So when I say he goes on and on, I'm saying that he can continue the conversation. I don't mean it in a bad way. It means that somebody, and that's the way it is. It's why you get somebody like me to host a show and let the doctor do what the doctor does and let me worry about making sure that the flow of the show goes. And then, of course, we have the producers as well, Mike and anybody else who might happen to be behind the board at the time. They're pushing the buttons and making sure that the technical things are going on. So it's really a team effort, and it's a fantastic thing. And we're doing it live. Like I said, it's 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we're taking your calls. You can join in the conversation. We're answering your health questions. And it's been really fun. We've taken calls from all around the world in the few weeks that we've been doing it, and it's just been really, truly great to do. And I can't wait till we figure out what the next stage of it is, because I think we all know that it's working and that it's going to be a thing that we want to bring to the network and to the listeners on the network, because of the fact that it is a live show. It's a little different, with these shows like this where it's recorded. And so you don't necessarily have to tune in to the network to catch the show. But this with the live thing, you just, when you're live, you kind of have to tune in. If you want that live experience, it was live if you're listening to it later, but it's not quite the same experience, and that's part of the fun of getting to do it. So that's 1 p.m. Central Standard Time right here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. It's Your Health in Mind with Dr. Dean Lloyd, and we had a great guest this past week. We were talking about polysaccharides and complex proteins and just the things that ultimately we lack in our diets. A lot of us lack in our diets, and about alternatives to getting them and how important they are, because we do a lot of these monosaccharides, these single sugars, regular sugar, as opposed to the complex ones that are actually used as building blocks, as opposed to just for sweetening and flavoring for the brain. Just a great conversation, and just great so many people need to understand the differences between the sugars, because they use so many of them and they're so prevalent in our foods. And just another great conversation. And you can hear one of those conversations. You can join in those conversations. That's the bigger part. And that's been kind of a little bit of a frustration for us, because we've only been doing the hour. It's just something that we wanted to test run, and we just had to figure out a time that it was reasonable to put it in there. And you're only just getting going. We start getting the calls really start going in the last sort of 20 minutes of it or so. And so you had to squeeze in 3 or 4 calls in there, and it would be better if we had another hour. But it's just a test run, and it's working out really well, and it's thanks to you guys again, and it's thanks to support for the network and everything that you do. So it's just wonderful to be able to do it. Just really enjoying what I'm doing, just almost every minute of my life. If I wasn't, boy, you can bet I wouldn't be doing it. Go to towardanarchy.com to follow along, and I have all sorts of fun stuff for you. There's a great bunch of links for you and stories. There's that wonderful quote: "Stop saying you didn't vote for this. If you voted for this. You voted for government, and you got it good." Because I keep seeing it. I just see it. It's in the social media. That's what I started to say there. It's over, and I'm watching the people, and I'm watching them, and I'm trying to figure out who they are and what it is, why it is that they think that they do. And I don't even know why I bothered to do this. It really, in terms of my having to be able to to communicate with people at the store, things like that. That all makes perfect sense. But just the general trying to figure out why it is people are so damn dumb. You know, I've done so many different things over the years trying to figure that out and trying to work in different ways and figure out why people understand the way they do and believe the things that they believe, and why and when they won't change their mind based on certain sets of information and certain topics, and who's delivering the topic. I just don't even know why, other than that I myself am just always trying to improve my own ability to communicate. There's a fantastic meme up there for this week, and it's actually a holdover from last week. A couple of things are, because I did promise last week to pick up, and I will here in just a second. This is the left wing, right wing, same bird, same cage. It's just a great little image. Perfect for sharing across the social media. Needs no more statement, nothing more, nothing less. You have a little half red, half blue bird in a cage, and that's what it says. Left wing, right wing, same bird, same cage. It just doesn't make any difference. That's it. That's the cage. That's where everybody is at. It doesn't matter if you voted or not. It doesn't matter which side you voted for. The only thing that would make the difference is if you had not voted. And I would suggest to you, because of course I put this out there, and people think that there are a lot of people that think that you have to vote, that it's important to vote, and that it's necessary to vote. But I would suggest to you, as I did to them, that not voting does something very specific, that it shows that I don't even tacitly agree with the system and its means to an end, the things that it does to achieve what it achieves, which is very little, but at a very high cost. And while I'm a privileged citizen, we've talked about this, where I'm an actual citizen, all sort of registered and born here, and I'm white, and there's all these advantages that I have supposedly that make it so that everything works out better for me. It's not my attitude. It's not how hard I work. Those aren't the things that count. It's the color of my skin and the particular political group that I support. But that I'm sorry. While I am a privileged citizen with full voting rights and can participate in the system, I choose not to participate ultimately in what is the subjugation of the losers, or anyone who refuses, people like myself who refuse, or people who can't, people who aren't able to. They just don't have the capacity, be it distraction, be it intelligence, be it physical capability, whatever it is, they just can't participate. I will not participate in the subjugation of those people, and ultimately I believe that voting validates the system, and that it's a surrender of individual liberty and right, and it's not just a surrender of the liberty and that right to the collective, but the collective that's violent and adversarial. That's what we've tried as a society over the years to do in creating governments, is to create governments that aren't adversarial to the people. And this is the best that we've come up with. And our courts are adversarial. That's a long conversation, but ultimately it's the idea of no victim, no crime. And it's part of what I want to talk about today, because I want to get into habeas corpus, because we talked about it before. It wasn't that long ago that I had Tonaway Downing on the show here. It was, I don't know, what's the date on this thing? Does this give a date? 2 months ago. So it was about 2 months ago based on this, just when I posted it to Rumble for the video version. And that's what, the justice system on trial, him putting the justice system on notice, was all about. At the core of it was this habeas corpus thing. So we'll look at some of the habeas corpus stuff, and it's pretty simple. We've talked about this before. I've been through this before. We've had this conversation before, and we will have to continue to. In fact, we'll have it again here in just a minute, on the topic that we continued from last week on the Second Amendment not making any sense. You remember that? Well, what I was talking about in there is that the only people that are going to be confused about the language of, say, habeas corpus, or the idea behind habeas corpus, or the idea behind the Second Amendment, or the idea behind the First Amendment, let alone the language of those things, is people who want to take those away from you, that want to take away your ability to, your free speech. They want to take away your rights. They want to make it so that you are not protected legally for the things that you say and do, even when those things that you say and do don't violate anybody else. That's the thing, is they try to make some claim that you're owning a gun endangers other people. It's the number one killer of children's guns is. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It kills all the children's. They're just dying left and right because of them guns. And that's not true. There's a link up there. The lying scumbags who hate gun owners and the facts of the Second Amendment often claim that the number one killer of children is guns. And of course, that's a lie. But, so what is the truth? The CDC says guns are the number one killer of children. But here's the real truth behind that. And this is an op-ed by David Mastillo, apparently. Kennedy's Make Children Healthy Again report is under attack for questionable science, imaginary research, and other formatting errors, as the White House calls them. Democrats are worrying about a politicized public health system selling snake oil to the American public. Well, there shouldn't be a public health system. That's going to be a theme throughout the rest of the show today, for sure. You'll be catching that one real quick. There shouldn't be a public health system. Problem solved. You don't have to look far back in time for examples of government, public health system, and private sector experts who influence it and spearhead its research efforts selling snake oil. Just a couple of years ago, COVID-19. Yep, that's where they're going. There was a public health official simply made up the claim that staying 6 feet apart would help stop the spread of COVID-19. They made up a bunch of stuff, and they're still making up things. Let's see. They're not good about COVID either. Remember the great kerfuffle over Flint, Michigan's lead problem? It's not just COVID. Sorry. It's not just about COVID. That was written weird. The people who were telling you that black kids were poisoned forget to tell you that their own data showed blood lead levels of lead in poisoned kids were much lower than just a decade earlier when nobody was talking about poisoned kids. This kind of stuff goes on all the time. It's sick, and people just fall for it. I got my own my business partner falling for it with the Trump thing here not too long ago. Because he was talking about the tariffs, and it was funny because it was just before the taco thing. If you're following along at towardanarchy.com, I'm talking about the taco economy, and all these things relate to the taco economy. And it was back before I heard the term, like Thursday of last week was the first time I heard them talk about the taco economics. Taco investing is really what started. It was in the investment circles that it started. And I've been talking to you about this over the weeks, about how what Trump is doing is he hasn't solved anything. He hasn't fixed anything. None of these tariffs, none of these threats of tariffs have actually fixed anything. That all they've done is raise, at this point, about $40 billion more in revenue for the government from us. We Americans were taxed, and it's caused and how it causes an unnatural balance in the economy. Ultimately, how they're ultimately changing the economy to what they want it to. They're making money off of these things. That everything that they're doing is a manipulation of the way the natural markets would work for their benefit. It's all so that the government can get richer. It's also that the president himself can get richer. I have a link on that in there today at towardanarchy.com. It's time for the annual Gun Violence Awareness Week this weekend. Buildings all over the country will light up in orange in solidarity with those who lost their lives, and in what has become a daily bloodbath we spend most of the year ignoring. That's quite the statement. Among the claims you'll be hearing is one I received from a local Kansas City backer of Moms Demand Action, a gun control group. Gun deaths are the number one cause of deaths of American children and adolescents, her email said. Others say the facts are even more stark. California Governor Gavin Newsom took out ads on social media saying guns are the number one killer of kids. In a speech to mayors, Vice President Kamala Harris said gun violence is the leading cause of death of children in America. Leading cause of death, not car accidents, not some form of cancer. It's gun violence. So, but what is the truth? The facts tell a different story. Guns are not the number one killer of children at any age between 0 and 12, and those are what we actually consider children. After that, they are teenagers, and then after that, they are adults. And they are people that are often out there on their own, making their own decisions, are capable of making their own decisions and knowing the difference between wrong and right, and are making choices. It's not guns that kill other people. It's people that kill other people. And see, they never have been. Cars are the biggest killer, and we know that. Cars and, abortions. Let's see, the CDC database is the one who says so. It's called Wonder. It tracks the cause of death in most U.S. deaths indexed by race, sex, and age, among other characteristics. For a number of kids, years of life, drowning or falls are greater than guns. A greater threat than guns. I asked the Kansas City activist who sent the claim to me why she was spreading such a lie. She didn't respond, but the national press person for Everytown for Gun Safety did reply, citing the CDC and National Institutes for Health as their sources. She sent links, and she's right. Here's what the CDC say. I was going to drop this, but this keeps getting better. And she's right. Here's what the CDC says, taking into account all types of firearm injuries, including homicides, suicides, and unintentional injuries. Firearm injuries were the leading cause of death among children and teens ages 1 to 19. See, now they even did it right there. And is that a quote? Yes. And so that's an exact quote. They separated children from teens and gave that other age group. Nobody believes that a 19-year-old is not an adult unless they aren't an adult. They're an adult. Everywhere in America, except in this scumbag town here in Topeka, Kansas, where they've managed, maybe it's all across Kansas now. I don't think it is, though. I think it's just in Shawnee County where they've managed to drive the tobacco ages even up to 21. Let's see. Children and teens definitely separated out. Okay, so what they mean is that they lump all of these dead children and teens into one pile, all from different reasons. The suicides, the accidents, the everything. Presumably police killing people. Police kill a lot of teenagers. And so let's see. While what they mean is if you lump all the dead children and teens into one pile and count how they died, for the whole gruesome pile, the number one killer was guns. But that is only because guns kill so many teens, a large number of them 18 and 19-year-old teen adults. And in a lot of places, 18 and 19-year-olds can legally carry guns. So it's just a manipulation of numbers, and it's just another lie, and it's exactly what I was getting at and why it makes sense that I would share the link up there. You can go read the rest of the story for yourself. Let's see. So I did want to follow up from last week, and I wanted to make sure that we did this because I left this hanging, and I really didn't want to leave this out there because it's another one of these stories. It's another one of these things that it appears to be maybe something that it's not, and that's what I was talking about, at the beginning of the show here just a little bit ago, in terms of customers liking the things that they like and then changing their mind and it being something that they, the cover kind of fooling them and them having to make a different choice. And to, any number of times I've made a suggestion to somebody and it just didn't turn out the way it was because I can only suggest what I know at what point, and then there's multiple issues. There's more to come. There's more to consider. And so by the time the 6-issue run has come around, they dropped off at 3 because they weren't liking the storyline, or they weren't, the storyline changed from what it seemed to be in the first issue, that sort of thing. And it's like one of these stories where you're just not getting the whole story. And so I have to challenge these things, and I like to do it openly like this, because to give the consideration, it's the reaction, right? It's the whole reaction thing that's so popular now, and it should be shocking. There should be people going, wow, that is the right reaction to some of these things. So this claim is that the Second Amendment makes no sense, and that they have 8 facts that can prove it. The Second Amendment is one of the most fiercely debated and poorly understood sentences in American history. It's just 27 words long. It's managed to divide legal scholars, ignite cultural wars, and spark legal battles for centuries. And again, I'd say to you that that's not true, that the only battles that it has started ultimately are when government wants to take that right away from you. The legal thing, the scholar thing. Scholars talking about it is one thing. Legal scholars talking about it is another. Legal practitioners battling over it is just that's just what legal people do, and they have their position, and their position, if they're arguing against the Second Amendment, is they're an authoritarian piece of crap who believes that only certain people should have the right to defend themselves, and the rest of us should wait 9 to 13 minutes for the police to show up after you call them. That's if you can call them, if you aren't already dead because you had to try to find a phone instead of a gun to defend yourself. Let's see. So 8 facts that shed light on why the Second Amendment has become a constitutional headache. It's only a constitutional headache for those who want to take your right to defend yourself away. Period. That's it. Period. That's the end of that conversation. Let's see. The amendment went through multiple drafts and got worse each time. That was the claim. That's right. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That would be perfect. I agree with that. We've talked about this before. I went through the Bill of Rights with you. I've gone through the Bill of Rights with you before and talked about the language of them and how this is what happens when you attempt to codify something, when you try to make something a law, that it's hard to make sure that you cover all your bases, and it takes very simple language. But when you're talking about the law, and when you're talking about looking for a legal reason to take away a right or to create a right in the first place, the first thing you do is you obfuscate that right with a bunch of language or a bunch of decisions that confuse the language, even when the language itself is very straightforward. I happen to think that the 27 words of the current Constitution make perfect sense. Of the Second Amendment, make perfect sense. But that this also makes perfect sense. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's perfectly fine, except that what happens when you redefine people? And tell me that hasn't happened, because it has. Because what they tell you is that citizens have rights, and that it doesn't say anything. It doesn't say citizens, the people of America, the American citizens. It doesn't include any of that language. It doesn't include any of that language, so all of that language can be used as a weapon against this piece of language. Well, we're not people. We're Americans. We're American citizens. Only Americans and only American citizens have a right, except that that's not what they meant, and so it shouldn't have to be that way. But that's what they're arguing about. If you want to break down the Second Amendment at this point, there are people on the right who staunchly believe in the right of the Second Amendment to keep and bear arms, but they don't believe that a Mexican coming across the border has that same right. Of course they do. All people have the right of the Second Amendment. Where in the Second Amendment doesn't it use the word people? It's the people. When it talks about militia, a well-regulated militia is people. And what about well-regulated? Well, it's the militia that's regulated, not the ownership of firearms. If there's any confusion about those things, it's because you don't understand words, or you don't want to understand words because you don't like those words. I told you about not having a friend, a very specific friend, a friend that I'd known for a long time because of that issue, this specific issue in this language. If you are one of those people who believes that there is language in the Second Amendment Amendment that gives the state, any state actor at all, period, any right ever to take away the right of self-defense, then the blood is on your hands. The blood of every dead person who could have defended themselves with a firearm but didn't because they didn't believe they had the right to defend themselves with a firearm for whatever reason, their blood is on your hands, period. You're responsible for it. It's people like you, ignorant people like you, stupid people like you, dangerous people like you, enemies of the state and people like you who put the rest of us in danger. Not just in danger from criminals and scumbags, but the government. Even though I repeat myself. So let's see. This clarity didn't last as the draft passed through Congress. Clauses were reordered and edited by the time it was finalized. It started with a reference to a militia, which many now argue muddies the waters of interpretation. It doesn't. The final version left us with a grammatically awkward structure that lawyers and judges are still trying to unpack 2 centuries later. Exactly. So it was done for their benefit, so they could somehow create. They wouldn't have thought they could do it with just simply the word people, because they knew what the word citizen meant at the time. If they meant for a citizen to have the right to keep and bear arms, American citizens, they would have said American citizens. They used the word people for a very specific reason. And these are the type of people, it sounds like these are the type of people, maybe even right-wing people, who would believe that most Americans, not criminals, not people of a certain age, not people of a certain color or background, if they came from another nation and they're not actually American and they don't really live here, that they don't have the right of self-defense. This might be what we're experiencing here. That might be why I have a problem with this. Gun control laws have often been rooted in racism. Of course. Historically, gun control in America hasn't always been about crime. It's never been about crime prevention. It's been about controlling marginalized populations. After the Civil War, many southern states passed black codes, which included laws. No, they were just codes, specifically barring black Americans from owning firearms. These laws were designed to keep newly freed people disarmed, dependent, reinforcing white supremacy. Now, take out white supremacy, take out black, and put just people in there, and put government in there. Barring people from owning firearms. These laws are designed to keep people from freeing themselves, keep them disarmed, keep them dependent on the system. And then you have the truth, the reality. That's what we face today. So any conversation about racism at this point is moot. It really truly is, when we all are affected by this problem. Even today, some critics argue that modern gun laws disproportionately affect poor and minority communities. They do, somewhat, but they absolutely affect everybody. When gun ownership is made expensive or bureaucratically difficult, those with fewer resources are left defenseless, both legally and physically. Boy, it's a good thing they're pointing out some of this stuff, because the way this thing started off, American police are now heavily militarized, making the Second Amendment more relevant. While many argue that the original justification for the Second Amendment protecting against tyrannical government forces is outdated, modern policing has shifted the conversation. In recent years, we've seen local police departments equipped with military-grade hardware, armored vehicles, automatic weapons, riot gear, and surveillance tech. This level of militarization blurs the line between soldier and cop. If the original threat was standing armies, what are today's heavily armed police departments, if not the domestic version? For many, the Second Amendment is more relevant than ever in guarding against abuses. Uh-oh, that's the wife. Why would she? Okay, so it wasn't extremely important, but good to know information. Okay, so this thing has shifted gears. It's wild the way this is done. And again, I would suggest that perhaps there was something going on here, that some of this was written by AI, or that they used AI for some of the compiling of the information of the language. It's really crazy the way it shifted in tone, right? At first it makes it sound like, and so far they haven't. What is the claim of the actual title here again? The Second Amendment makes no sense. Here are 8 facts that prove it. It's weird. John Peterson is the author in his Survival World. We talked about that before, and I looked at one of their articles. I think it was one of their articles before we shared a few weeks back when I was talking about the Second Amendment, and guns in particular. And one of the articles, one of the things that I read, I remember following through very specifically, and it said at some point in there that AI had been used to compile the article. And it was also like this, where it was sort of what the hell are they talking about? What do they actually mean? Are they attempting? I get that you use a headline like that. It's inflammatory. The Second Amendment makes no sense. Here are 8 facts that prove it. One person looks at that and says, all right, well, here's 8 pieces of evidence that I can use against these gun nuts that I see around all the time. And the other guy looks at it and says, oh, well, here's 8 pieces of evidence that I can use against the psychopaths who try to take away guns and try to disarm populations. Whereas I look at it and go, what the hell are these people talking about? Why can't you just say what you actually mean? Why do you have to trick me into reading your work and being critical of your thoughts until you clarify what it is that you're saying? It's this game that people play. Hey, if you really want to know, you really want people to know a bit of information as opposed to just click on your story, state it. Make the statement and make the true statement. Don't make a counter statement. Don't make a counterfactual statement attempting to drive. It seems dishonest to me. It makes it hard to want to trust what the person is saying because they're not approaching you from a point of trust. It's like me. When I do something like that, it's tongue in cheek. You know exactly what is happening. You know from experience that that's what's happening, and it's obvious that I'm making that claim, whereas it seems just kind of sneaky, and it seems unnecessary, because what you need to do is just put your information out there and put the facts out there and let people decide, and don't give them an opportunity. What are you telling me, that the language of the Constitution is confusing? No, it's not. You're playing right into the hands. So if you're trying to suggest right here that police in America are too heavily militarized and that's exactly why we have the Second Amendment, you're exactly right. It's so that nobody can take control over the people, that whether it's the government or whether it's criminals, again, repeating myself, it doesn't matter who it is, that we have the right, the ability, that it's not going to be necessarily immediately assumed legally that we are in the wrong when we defend ourselves. How complicated is that to understand? Not at all, unless you're trying to confuse the issue. And if you're trying to clarify the issue, you don't agree with the enemy and suggest to them that there's something wrong with the language. And yes, if you're an enemy of the Second Amendment, you're an enemy of the people. I absolutely believe that, even though I don't give a crap about the Second Amendment in terms of my own reality and my own existence. I couldn't care less if a Second Amendment existed or not. I would still own and carry any means of ability to defend myself at any time and place that I could get away with it without being, murdered for just simply being prepared to defend myself by the people who just claim they're out to protect you, and you don't need to defend yourself from anyone because they're there to protect you, even though they're the ones that are most likely to kill you. It's a circular thing, and it'll drive a person insane. That's why you don't give them any room. You don't let them have the language. Capitalism. The word capitalism, I won't let you have it. I won't let you have the word anarchist. You don't get to have these words. The leftists, the socialists, the scumbags, the things that actually hate what anarchy really is, true freedom, the people that hate what the ideals of sort of codifying a Second Amendment are, those are much more important. The idea of capitalism, again, And the idea that that is something that is a manipulation and not just a right of all of us to be able to exchange and grow our wealth in any way we see fit and to accept the consequences for our actions in doing so. You want to talk about blurring the lines? This level of militarization blurs the lines. What are you trying to do here? Are you trying to placate both sides of the argument? Are you trying to pretend like you're inviting them both in? Because this is a clear statement in contradiction of the idea that there's something wrong with the language of the Second Amendment. You should just defend the language of the Second Amendment. It's amazing I could still find something wrong with this. This is why it's wrong. State constitutions were pro-individual gun rights first. Before the Bill of Rights was ratified in 1791, individual states were already codifying the right to bear arms. It doesn't matter. The reason the Second Amendment exists is so that all states within the Union recognize it, whether they want to try to pass some law, some reason to say that you can't have one, that supposedly that right is protected everywhere. And more importantly, that it's protected when you go from one place to another, that you can't be immediately a criminal just because you have a firearm and crossed an imaginary line somewhere. My God, man, why is this so hard to understand? Before the Bill of Rights was ratified in 1791, individual states were already codifying the right to bear arms. Pennsylvania's Constitution in 1776 stated citizens had the right. Did it? You see, it's not a quote. Who cares about citizens? Citizens are a construct of the state. People have the right to bear arms. That's why, God, my God, can't these people see this? Why can't you stand up for the right, for the language, for the understanding? You don't have to stand up for the institution. You don't have to stand up for the institution even of the documents themselves. You just have to stand up for the obvious, clear language and intent of these things. You are surrendering the language. You're surrendering the word militia when you suggest that there's something wrong with using it. What they were suggesting is that the reason that a state stays a free state and doesn't need a standing army is because the people are all armed and that they are invited to be a part of a militia to defend the state against invaders. Again, what is so hard to understand about this? I've never spent any time studying this stuff. I've only ever just read them and looked at the words and gone, oh, you mean people means all people? Not just white people? Holy crap, not just Americans, not just people who live on American soil, but anyone that comes through and is on American soil and anywhere someone is accused by an American court of violating some right of someone or vice versa, of their property or anything. Oh my God, what a novel idea. You mean it's not just for citizens? It's not just for these made-up people who only have rights that exist under and within the state? No. People exist before the state. The state doesn't exist without the people. The people are the state. So, again, can we just not stand up for the people? Can we just not do that? Because that's what standing up for the Bill of Rights would be. That's what I try to do. Even though I can sit here in the same breath and tell you that they're meaningless, I can still tell you that what they meant and what the language actually means and what it should mean to the law. I tell you that they're meaningless because the law looks at it in the way that these people are looking at it. Like there's a question about what was meant when there was no question about what was meant. The people have the right to keep and bear arms. You can imagine that the other things change that central idea, but they don't. They only change them when you want to change what the people are, what a militia is, what a firearm is, when you want to change what the meaning of words are. That's when you decide that these things don't work, that they don't make sense. Let's see, these early examples place the emphasis squarely on the individual's right of self-defense. That's what it should be. Yeah. And again, the militia, it's for the benefit of the state to suggest to the state that the reason why every single individual should have the right to be armed and the right of their self-defense is so that when they do call, then when something does happen, when there is an invading force, when a militia is needed to call together, that the people actually have the firearms, that they actually are armed, and that they've been protected in being armed, so that whoever the invading force is, particularly if it's an internal invading a force, that they're protected, that they haven't had that right stripped away from them, that the invading force, the internal invading force, can't just run roughshod over everybody, over all the people. And see, interestingly, these versions reverse the order found in the federal Second Amendment, suggesting the right itself was more important than the context of military service. You're suggesting that that means military service. That's a lie. That's wrong. Oh my God. What the hell is it that you people are... What is this game that is being played right here on us? I don't get this. This is so weird. What the hell? Militia is not military service. Military service is military service. The militia is an army of citizens prepared to come together to defend the state from invasion. These are two completely different notions. Entirely different notions. That citizens don't work for the state. The military does. The militia doesn't work for the state. It works for the people who make up the state. They are the people that make up the state. Oh my God, I can't believe what I'm reading. And these people are supposed to be survival people. These people are supposed to be people on the side of the Second Amendment. If the people who are on the side of the Second Amendment don't even understand it and can't get it right, it's no wonder that we have to question whether or not we have some Second Amendment right, whether there is some other prefatory clause. There is no prefatory clause. Oh my God. We'll finish this when we get back here. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. The air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. I don't want you to protest, I don't want you to riot, I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being, my life has value.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here's your host, Michael Storm.
And here we go off into hour number 2, and follow along at towardanarchy.com. We'll pick right back up where we were just a split second from now. Just want to make sure everybody is all on the same page, because this has been an interesting thing so far, and I want to know if you're with me on this or not. So we will get right back into looking at this thing about the Second Amendment, and then we'll get into all this other stuff. If you go to towardanarchy.com, the episode is 2520. And I'll get to talking about this taco economy and what that means and some of the things that have happened. And it's even just in the last 24 hours, things are changing. It's a very fluid situation with the whole presidency and Doge and Elon Musk and everything that's going on. And there's this childish tit for tat that's happening. The bromance is over, and it could be kind of dangerous for government in a lot of ways. And of course then for us as it trickles down. So we'll jump back into that and try to cover some of that as well. The links and everything are up there at towardanarchy.com, no matter what. If we don't get to a very specific conversation at any point, the information is always there for you to go and follow up on. I don't say these things in a vacuum. They're happening. It's all real. It's all happening in real time, and I only tell the truth about the stuff. I see it. I see it, and then I say something about it to you. It's actually kind of a neat thing the way that works. Towardanarchy.com, 2520, wherever you're finding the show at right now. give a quick second to click that like button, whether it's a thumbs up or a heart or whatever it is. Just a quick second to click that little like button and let me know that you're out there. And let me get a drink and dive into this thing. And hopefully the guys that are working on the roof don't fall through while we're sitting here. It literally could happen. They're running around up there. I hear them now stomping around. Well, okay, they're probably not stomping around, but it sounds like stomping around from where I'm at. You probably won't be able to hear it. And like I say, as long as one of them doesn't actually fall through the roof, there was some problems. We've had a lot of rain here lately, and I'm at the comic book shop. And the roof in here, luckily, it didn't leak on any comics, but there was a small leak, and there has been before, but it's always just sort of a trickle down the wall kind of thing. It's where the windows are, and it only happens if the rain is blowing in a certain direction, and so we just know to keep everything away from that spot. That could, it's only the one spot that really does it. But this last rain, I think it tore some tile off of the roof and has actually created another spot or two. So we'll have to see what they got going on up there. But we don't own the building, so at least we don't have to worry about that. That's not one thing that's necessarily on our list of things to worry about. We go, ooh, problem, point to the landlord, and he takes care of it quick like a bunny. And James is really great, actually. All right, so towardanarchy.com, 2520. And I do have I wanted to tell you about, I've been talking to you about comic books, of course, and telling you about a comic book I read each week, but I still am watching movies, I'm still playing some games, I'm still doing the other things and having the fun that I do. And one of the neat things that popped up this week in terms of something to watch was the new Predator movie. It's an animated movie. It's called Predator Killer of Killers. And I really enjoyed it. It's great. Someone is collecting the greatest warriors throughout time: Vikings, ninjas, U.S. military pilots, World War II pilots, that sort of thing. They're what fit the bill. I don't know if the World War II pilot really fits the bill. He's almost there as just he's the comedic relief part of it, because the ninja and the Viking, they're so serious. And you can't speak their language. These people, they can't communicate with each other, and they've been snatched up. Whoever's collecting them up has snatched them up, and they're all prisoner, and whatever they end up doing, they're going to have to figure it out together. But the World War II character is a bit of a comic relief type character, because he's not really a warrior. He's just a sort of a skinny kid early in his military career, doesn't really have a lot of experience. He's smart, he's sharp, and sharp-witted, but he definitely is not he's definitely the humor in it. He's not meant to be taken particularly seriously, and I guess that's the point. Well, so the Viking and the ninja, they actually fight the predator that they encounter. They encounter a predator. That's what happens. Each of these people, they encounter a predator, and they ultimately end up beating the predator. And these guys, they beat them. They sort of cut them apart and tear them up. But whereas the World War II pilot, he's fighting against somebody else, that a predator that is in a craft. He's not facing the actual predator itself, and there's a lot of circumstantial things that happen that enable him to get away from the predator, to defeat the predator that's in this craft that's shooting down all these ace pilots. And so it's a little bit, he kind of worked his way in there accidentally, but it doesn't make the story any worse for wear. It's just something that I happened to notice about the character, as it just stood out that he wasn't in the same class as the other others in terms of his ability to fight. For one, he's using a machine, and while the predators tend to use devices and weapons, they themselves are fighting machines, and it's more about the combat. And you get to see some different types of predators and predators in different places, and the whole thing is real neat. But of course, when they get there and they find out what they have to do and why they've been collected up after, because it's really not fair. They go through and they defeat these predators. They survive this massive attack, these massive beasts with their deadly weapons and their technology that's far more advanced than anything a ninja or a Viking would come across, for sure. And they defeat them, and the next thing they know, they wake up, they're prisoners on some kind of ship. They're in a prisoner galley and being hauled off somewhere, and it's really just not fair. It's really great. There's some ties to they tie it directly into the current storylines. There's a new Predator movie coming out. There was Prey here, I don't know, a year or so ago, which was really good. It just aired on Hulu, but it was really cool. Because it's kind of like this. We're talking about a warrior with no technology, no real skills, not even firearms, not even modern firearms, something like that, figuring out how to defeat one of these crazy predator beasts. Quite the word. That word shouldn't be that hard to say. Michael Biehn is one of the voices in here. He's Kyle Reese from the Terminator, but the thing about that is he's one of 3 people that have been in the Terminator franchise, the Aliens franchise, and the Predator franchise. So Biehn is the 3rd person to do that. And I thought I had in here, Lance Henriksen. And who was the other one? It was Bill Paxton. The great Bill Paxton, the great late Bill Paxton. Predator, killer of killers, man. It's airing out there right now. If you can find it in the streams, hunt it down, if you will. It's worth the watch. All right, so now I want to jump back into. Get back to the website there, 2520. It's the episode at towardanarchy.com. And I want to jump right back into this Second Amendment thing because, for one thing, I've had a little bit of a break since the first hour there and a little bit of time to think about it. And I want to know if you are with me on this. I want to understand. I want you to understand where it is that I'm coming from on this question of what's happening here in their question. In their questioning of the Second Amendment and why they can't seem to. The Second Amendment makes no sense, and they supposedly have 8 facts to prove it. And what I'm having a hard time with is the language and what they're speaking about. They're talking about, it seems as if they're trying to defend the Constitution, but they're using this sort of backdoor language and this backdoor approach to it, and we can't afford that. And I'm speaking to you statists. I'm speaking to you constitutionalists, you Republicans, even you people who like democracy, whatever. As somebody who doesn't care about these documents, I don't care about these documents. It's clear to me that history has shown and will continue to show that they don't care about these documents. The people that run the nation, the people who make the laws, the people who enforce them, they don't care about these documents unless and until one of these sentences, one of these words, one of these phrases is used to beat them down in a courtroom. That's the only time that they care about them. They otherwise don't care about them, so I don't care about them. They clearly don't protect us. They clearly do not offer the so-called protections that they do, and this is why, because people will sacrifice the language. Are you with me on that? I'm not just ranting and raving about this. I find there to be something fundamentally wrong with this approach. If it's their attempt to try to defend the Second Amendment and the right of self-defense, they're going about it the wrong way because they're sacrificing the language. They're admitting a loss right up at the beginning. They said the Constitution doesn't make any sense. They're saying the Second Amendment doesn't make any sense. Well, it does make sense. It makes sense to anybody who understands words and who can go look up words and who has any sense of history and the time in which these things were framed. And even if you don't have these things, if you just have simple common sense and realize that every person everywhere, anytime, is born with the natural right of self-defense, and that's already recognized, and that's one of the problems with what they're talking about in here, because if you remember last hour, one of the things that they mentioned was this thing about the states' constitutions were already pro-individual gun right. Well, that's because the right of self-defense was recognized. It was so well understood that we almost didn't get a Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is not necessary to tell you and I that we, of course, as people, have the right to defend ourselves at any time we see fit, with anything we see fit, for any reason we see fit. We have to deal with the consequences otherwise. It's not about morality. It's not about making some imaginary goal inside society be true because I was a good guy. I didn't do what is expected of me if I were a bad guy, and so I get to be the good guy, following along counterintuitively to the very basic notion of self-defense, and something that has existed for thousands of years, long before the Constitution came along. Any constitutional scholar, any good Second Amendment scholar, will tell you that the Second Amendment has its roots as far back, at least, as Hammurabi's Code, and where they began to recognize that rulers and the ruling class were not the be-all, end-all, and that they needed to provide some sort of protections and understandings of people. You know, we'll talk about habeas corpus. We can get into it a little bit before we run out of time here this hour. And habeas corpus is something that goes back to the Magna Carta, and it is another statement that the sovereign is not sovereign. that he doesn't just get to say that the rest of us have to suffer at his whim. And of course, in the case of habeas corpus, it suggests that if you're going to take somebody, it's about taking the body, it's about physically taking a person and holding them captive. That if you're going to do that, that you have to prove that there's a reasonable reason to do that this person is a danger, that if you don't capture this person and keep them, that they're going to continue to harm somebody else, that they need to pay for the crimes that they've been accused of, and that if they've been accused of a crime, that the sovereign, that the state, that the people in charge don't get to just make up a crime and say that you're guilty of it so that they can lock you in a cage when they don't like you, particularly if it's ultimately, and it almost always is, related to their political stance, their political or social position, that you either your existence flies in the face of, your actions fly in the face of, or that you've used your position, your voice, your freedom to speak out against them because they're criminal scum. All right, so let's see, the prefatory clause, that's where we left off. There's a prefatory clause to the Second Amendment, but it's not, though. Okay, so this is kind of what I was getting at I spoke about it just briefly in trying to understand that the individual, we already understand that the individual has the right of self-defense and can defend himself reasonably with anything. It doesn't matter, firearms, whatever it is. The individual has the right of self-defense. It's already well understood. I'm talking about the time of the creation of the Second Amendment. And so it doesn't make sense to just simply clarify for the individual in terms of the state. When you're talking talking about the collective. You don't need to clarify that the individual has the right of self-defense, just like we have the right of travel. We have the right to travel anywhere that's open, that's not private property. It makes sense. And of course, it makes sense that we have the right to do so with any means of conveyance. And again, that we accept the consequences of the actions and the things that we do, and that we're not violating other people to cause negative consequences. And we're not doing that when we're driving without permission from the state. So it only makes sense that because we're not harming other people, we have these things, they're natural rights that are understood, and you don't need to codify those things. We get it. If you impede my movement, I run you over. If you try to kill me, if you try to take what's mine, I kill you. That's really simple. We understand this. But what about in this position? I'm speaking for you statists here again. I'm trying to speak in your language because you're the people who are supposed to care about this stuff, and you're the people who are supposed to defend this stuff, and you're the ones that are out there supposedly in charge of this thing and placing the votes and making the change, right? So I'm speaking to you in your language. These documents, they exist to make sure that government recognizes those rights within the context of the state. Not that you don't already have those rights, that they needed to be codified. That's not what they're for. We already know they exist. We already get they exist. We have thousands of years, a couple hundred years or more, just here in America alone. So we have thousands of years of understanding that people are free, and they can speak, and they can walk about, and they can do what they want with their lives, and they can make their wealth and exchange their wealth the way they want to. These things are already a given. It's within the context of society and within the confines of the statist paradigm that we have to be concerned about where these things are protected. So when you talk to the state, you say, hey, state, you realize that you are just the people, right? And if you don't want a standing army, if you don't want somebody who rules over you with an iron fist and who is capable, who you are capable of redressing with your grievances, to have the conversation with, to be able to replace them when they don't represent what you want them to represent for you within the system, you can remove them. You have the power to do that, and they don't have the power to stop you if you're doing so through this system that has been set up. Well, we know that they don't pay attention to this. We know that they don't care about this, and the founders understood that too. So what do? You codify those rights, and you make them speak in terms directly to the state. You say, well, all of you people, we get it. Some of you are going to be political. Some of you are not. Some of you are going to care about the Second Amendment. Some of you are not. And so what we're saying here is that when you come together as a collective, when you are the state and you are in danger, this is the reason why you should protect the right of all of you individually to keep and bear your firearms. Because how is it that if you don't keep and bear your firearms, and if you don't have a standing army, how do you intend to protect the state? How do you intend to protect yourself as a collective, as a voluntary collective, where everybody is working together for the very cause of just living and being and occupying a relative space to each other? This should all be so easily understood. If I can explain this, anybody should be able to explain this. But then again, I'm thinking, people are smarter than they are, and they just aren't. Boy, there's a couple of bangs. They really are fixing up there. I'll be surprised if you don't hear some of those, man. Some of them are pretty, just a bam. At any rate, let's see, the prefatory clause, a well-regulated militia. I just explained it. That's exactly what it is. There's no more to explain. I would just be beating a dead horse. Political party positions on the Second Amendment have flipped over time. Who cares? Who cares? Who cares what the political parties think of the Second Amendment? The assault weapons ban was class warfare in disguise. Oh, definitely, absolutely, and that's why it was always allowed to sunset. The 1994 federal assault weapons ban, all of this is coming out of recent events, things that had happened in Colorado, Columbine. So the assault weapons ban was put into place, but it had a sunset clause in it. And so it's no longer, it's gone away. Let's see. Part of the larger Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act prohibited manufacturing or selling of 19 types of semi-automatic firearms. However, it allowed people who already had them to keep them. Yeah, there was a grandfather clause. Yep. Let's see. They got to keep theirs. What about everyone else? Yeah, that's class warfare. No question about it. I like how they put that. But none of these things are what they've said they are. None of this is what here are 8 facts to prove. None of these things are facts that prove that there's something wrong with the Second Amendment or that it doesn't make any sense. And so this whole premise is just sad. And this is what passes for journalism that's in favor of the Second Amendment and the right of self-defense. Are you kidding me with this crap? The amendment was inspired by England but altered in America. Second Amendment has roots in the English Bill of Rights. It's further back than that. The Second Amendment goes all the way back to the first legal recognition, which we generally understand to be Hammurabi's Code, of the individual right of self-defense. And obviously they weren't talking about firearms 3,000 years ago, but that's not the point. That's not the point of the Second Amendment. And it's to keep and bear arms. It doesn't say keep and bear firearms. It means arms. Anything you can arm yourself with. It doesn't mean anything specifically. It means anything. It's everything. It's anything it could ever be. Anything that you can defend yourself with, you have the right to defend yourself with it. It's recognized. And if you have to bring a chair to a gunfight, I pity you, but at least you go armed. You go in swinging hard, or hold that thing up like a shield and pretend. Some people seem to think that if you hold the Second Amendment up when people are shooting at you, that when the state, in particular, the military, the police, is shooting at you, it'll magically protect you. But I think the chair would have a better shot at it. Let's see, Second Amendment has its roots in the English Bill of Rights in 1689. It really just goes further back than that, which stated that Protestants could have arms suitable to their conditions and as allowed by law. See, there's nothing about that that's like the Second Amendment. Likening that to the Second Amendment is like comparing apples to oranges. Just as simple as that. They are two different things. That is a specific group of people called Protestants, and there's conditions. Everything is conditional. There's nothing conditional about the Second Amendment. The prefatory clause of the Second Amendment is not conditional. It's not conditional. It's saying it's necessary. It's not saying it's conditional. If anything, it's saying it's unconditional. It's being very clear in its language that it's unconditional. Pick up anything and arm yourself and help defend the state, because you have the right of self-defense, and we together as a state, as a collective, have the right to choose to defend ourselves as a collective. Let's see, beyond the grammar, why this still matters. This should be interesting. Critics of the Second Amendment often point to its confusing syntax. It's not confusing. And archaic phrasing. It's not archaic. There's nothing old about it. Militias are still things. Guns are still things. Arms are still things. Let's see, people are still things. The state is still a thing. What of the language of the Second Amendment is archaic? Your understanding of language seems to be lacking. I wouldn't call that archaic. Let's see. But poor grammar doesn't mean poor purpose. The right of self-defense, the ability to resist tyranny, and the means to protect property remain deeply embedded in the American psyche. While the wording may be clumsy, the values it represents are fiercely defended. It's such a weird switch of the language. Why don't you defend it all along? What is it that you're not accomplishing anything here? You're not fooling the anti-gun person into it. You might get them with the headline, but as soon as they start reading it, they see through you, and they see through your weak attempt to suggest that there's something wrong with the language as you defend it. It's mind-boggling, this approach to trying to speak to people. It's so dishonest. And it seems so unnecessary to me that, as somebody who speaks to people all the time and tries to speak to them in their own language, in case you haven't noticed, that's what's happening here in this instance. I'm trying, and I do it all the time. I try to speak to the statists in their own language. I try to speak to the voters in their own language because they seem to believe this stuff. Well, if you believe it so much, then how do you let things like this happen? How do you let the people who defend your Second Amendment in the press and who are having the conversation in the press use language like this, use wording like this, put this out there as being somehow a reasonable defense of the Second Amendment? Oh, the Second Amendment sucks, but we got to keep it anyway. No, it doesn't suck. There's nothing wrong with it. The only thing that sucks about it is that the government doesn't believe it, that the government, that the authoritarians think that they can rob, cage, or murder you anytime they see fit, and they'll just make it up all along. And the thing about it is, and they get this, and clearly you guys don't, no matter how many times I say this to somebody, no matter how far removed from statism they are, you don't seem to get this, that when you're dead, you're dead. It doesn't matter what happens, the law, the rules, the pieces of paper, the scumbag authoritarians that get away with it, whoever it is, it doesn't matter. You're dead. Your defense of the Second Amendment as being something that's conditional, something that we can work with, that there are reasonable controls that we can enact, is just a sacrifice to this. It's sacrificing your life to the system. You're sacrificing yourself to the system. You're saying that the system has the ability to make these choices for you and to make the decisions for you, and that you and more so than that, because so many times it's not even about the act of having the ability to defend yourself. It's the act. It's not having the ability to defend yourself, and it's not us living in a society where criminals understand that the consequences of their actions, even the most minor, silliest thing, the thing that they find completely ridiculous. Oh, I'm just going to take this loaf of bread and that'll be fine. It's no big deal. It's only $3 or whatever it is to make a loaf of bread these days. So I'm just going to take it. Oh, all of a sudden I'm dead. Oh, well, that's unreasonable. Jesus Christ, that guy just killed me over a loaf of bread. What a piece of crap he is. I can't believe that, except that you're dead. You're not having that conversation. And it doesn't matter how unreasonable he was. It doesn't matter if he followed the law. None of it matters. You're dead. So do you not understand what the right of self-defense is, what justice is, after all these years of me talking about these things? And coming at and talking to you about them as somebody who has been repeatedly violated by the state and nearly repeatedly violated by individuals, and having exercised my so-called protected rights to defend myself without ever harming a person, and yet I'm still persecuted by the state. It's literally what the Second Amendment is supposed to keep the state from doing. Seriously, literally what it's supposed to keep them from. Yet 100,000 plus people around the nation are arrested, caged, and prosecuted, not necessarily convicted, of violating some ultimately right of their own to defend themselves from somebody. Sometimes, many of the times, quite literally, a good majority of the times out of this 100,000 or so, and this is a very fluid number, obviously, but they've done nothing. They literally is just somebody who starts crap with somebody in a park and they happen to be wearing a gun, and the person freaks out after they realize they're wearing a gun, and they cry to the police, and the police arrest the person with the gun, and they never took the gun out of their holster. This happens all the time, and it's literally exactly what the government is not supposed to be able to do. First of all, when nobody's harmed, there's no crime. Second of all, when two people go at it and beat each other up, shoot each other or kill each other, whatever happens, stab each other, beat the crap out of each other with a baseball bat, it's called mutual combatants. And it doesn't matter who has the greater force. It doesn't matter who wins. None of that matters. All that matters is that they are the only ones that are affected by it. Two people shooting each other shouldn't affect anybody else in America and their right to carry, own, use, defend themselves, period. At all, ever. That's the whole point of recognizing it through the state and giving the state the idea, look, you can't even be a state if we don't have the ability to defend ourselves and defend ourselves from anyone. This is so frustrating. That's why it's legal. Political and cultural battles over its meaning persist, and why it continues to be one of the most litigated and passionately discussed part of the Constitution. Well, it's not a part of the Constitution. It's part of the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is a second document. It has an entirely different purpose than the Constitution. It's written entirely differently. It's written from the perspective and for the perspective of the people in defense of the state, whereas the Constitution is clearly the rules of operation of the state. So stop. Why do you continue to do this? Why do you continue to pretend that the government has to recognize the Constitution? No, the government doesn't recognize the Constitution at all. The Constitution is just something that it tries theoretically to operate within, and when it doesn't like it, it alters it. The Bill of Rights is our protections from government that stand alone by themselves, that make their own. They don't need any other clarification, no other document. They're not attached to anything. You know, amendment means two different things. It means fixing something that was already previously done, and it means an addition to. Well, this is the more of the addition to. In addition to the Constitution, here is the Bill of Rights. And again, it's a statist thing that was an afterthought. Let's see. Legal riddle wrapped in the American flag. Second Amendment is a mess of comments, clauses, and controversy. Jesus Christ. I'm done. I'm not reading this thing anymore. I'm not coming to a conclusion on it. You get my conclusion on it. Holy crap. I've said more about the Second Amendment in the years that I've been on the air than the courts have. I've been a more staunch defender of it than any patriot that has ever lived, it would seem. The whole notion is ridiculous. Let's look at a couple of these other things before we run out of time. We're still cruising along just fine, but oh my. TowardAnarchy.com, 2520, that is the episode. Let's see, what's this one? In the wake of recent attacks in D.C. and Colorado, the claim is that public spaces are hard to secure. That's nonsense. I have a two-step plan that gives everyone maximum protection. It goes right along with what we've been talking about for weeks now. It seems that it's the only conversation at this point because they just seem to be trying to take it away everywhere you go. Just the ability to defend yourself, and they obviously they have a reason. There's a reason that they want to take away your ability to defend yourself, because they don't want you to defend yourself from what they're doing. That's the reality of it, because we're not running around at it's not an epidemic of people dying, and it would be less of an epidemic of people dying than it is if we all lived under this notion that if you aggress against somebody, if you violate somebody, if you damage their property or deprive them of their property or attempt to defraud them or harm them, that you can die, that you will potentially die, and that it's okay that you're dead because you're dead and you're dead, and that you're just dead and you're dead. I don't even know how many more ways I can put it, because they're just not. There's not even another. There's not even another way. There is no other space. There's no other place. There's no ability. There's no special magic. There's nothing going to protect you. Nothing at all is going to change the fact that you're dead. And if you don't defend yourself before you have to defend before you have to defend yourself, then you won't be able to defend yourself. That's all there is to it. It just has to be in the moment. You can't wait around for a judge or a jury. What's the thing about better to face 12 than be carried by 6? Is that it? It's something like that, right? I don't like cliches. I don't like cliche statements like that because they don't do it. It's a T-shirt slogan like we were talking about last week, right? With Paul Dayton, and it's a T-shirt slogan. It's a literal T-shirt slogan. The Second Amendment, the right of self-defense, the ability, the right of any person to defend themselves from anything is not a T-shirt slogan. It's a fact. It's a reality. It's only a T-shirt slogan when you can sell it to people and sell the idea that other people can protect you, that the system can protect you, that pieces of paper can protect you. None of these things are true. So my two-step plan for securing public spaces, so you know what happened, right? These were sort of anti-Israel protests. These are pro-Palestinian people who are they're having these protests, and then somebody or they're pro-Israeli people having protests against Palestine, or whatever whatever these are. This is what they're talking about. They're talking about this kind of public space where you're allowed to gather together and protest, and to protest about something, and then having some lone person, some individual or small group of people come in and assault those people for their political reasons, whatever it is. That's all this is about, regardless of who's protesting what on what side, or who's attacking who on what side. And these instances in D.C. and Colorado happen to be about Israel and Palestine. The Palestinian man that attacked and tried to light some people on fire in Boulder, Colorado, and I think it was Boulder, right? And they, of course, then they make this claim. This has all happened over here the last week and a half or so, and they make this claim that they can't protect these spaces, and that's just not true, because in this two-step plan of mine, you can absolutely fix that problem. This idea that an open public space can't be secured when there's thousands of people in it immediately goes away if all of those people are empowered to defend themselves, and people live under the fear that if they assault somebody, if they attack somebody, if they throw fire bombs at somebody, that somebody is going to shoot them dead on the spot. Maybe perhaps many someones, and they'll get to feel every single little bullet. That if that fear actually existed in people, and then step 2, there was no such thing as public space, that it wasn't that we had to rely on people to show up 9 to 13 minutes afterwards, or to show an authoritarian presence and not a protective presence. That's a problem with police in a public space, when they show up with their weapons and their gear and things like that, and they're here to protect the public. They're not. They're an adversarial force. We've talked about this before, that well, even in the quote, what was the quote that I gave you earlier? That stop saying you didn't vote for this. If you voted for this. You voted for government and you got it good. This idea that you're not here, you're not present, that you're not participating in this, that you're not seeing what's going on, and that you can't do something about it, that the people can't do something about it, that when we see something happening, that we have to rely on authoritarian presence to deal with it, instead of just everybody being able to understand that we can defend ourselves, and that we have the ability to defend ourselves, and that when we do defend ourselves, that the questions about our defense will be limited, and that no matter what those questions are, again, if you're the violator, you're the guy that gets killed because you decided to steal a loaf of bread from somebody. It doesn't matter if it's unreasonable. You're dead. And I just stop using excuses. Stop using the government. Stop using pieces of paper. Stop using imaginary protections to protect you from things that can't that you can't be protected from. They're not magical shields. They're just not going to be there when you need them, and we need to stop surrendering ourselves to this system and to this idea that there's such a thing as a so-called polite society. There are plenty of people who are polite and happy and nice until they're no longer polite and happy and nice. And then you need the ability to defend yourself. And it needs to be so reasonable as to not be questioned by other people when you defend yourself, particularly anyone who isn't involved. It would be different if the family of somebody you kill comes after you civilly, or even if they want to come after you gunning. That's something that you have to accept as a possible chance of things. Look, who's coming after you? Does it matter who's coming after you? Does it matter at all if they have a badge or they have authority or if they're just somebody off the street? Does it matter if you were completely justified? Does it matter if you weren't completely justified? No, it doesn't. The only thing that matters is that they're coming, and you have to defend yourself, and you have to accept the consequences of your actions. And presumably, if they're coming for you, then they're ready to accept the consequences of their actions, and that means up to and including their own death. What is so hard to understand about this? The only people who don't understand this are cowards and voters. And I repeat myself. I do that a lot. Let's see. What is there? So, public space is hard to secure? No. A population that's armed and prepared and empowered to defend themselves, and no public spaces. Simple. I think I lost something in there that I was going to say, and maybe I'll remember it and come back to it. But just to hit a few more of these, there's a number of these links up there. You won't really know when a recession starts, even though there's been so this I'm trying to remember what it is that I put in here. These are my quotes. I said it's true, you won't really know when a recession starts, even though there have always been a set of clear economic markers and conditions relative to recession that were altered not so long ago to confuse the issue. What I found interesting about this article, and a lot of articles on economics, is not that necessarily that there's manipulated news or information within the context of the article, but what else is always in there? It's always in there. It always seems to be written by investment people. It's always investment firms. It's somebody trying to sell some kind of investment. I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's stocks and bonds or whether it's gold and silver, but they're always these economic questions, and that's problematic. That's really problematic, because it means that the mainstream media is only putting out content, and it happens all the time, is only putting out content on economics that talks about investing. It's it's trying to sell you something. Its goal is not when the last thing that you talk about, when the wrap up of your article is, oh, and by the way, you can invest with us, then the point of the article was not whatever it was about. It doesn't matter what it is, whatever aspect, if it's employment or whatever it was. It doesn't matter, because they're trying to sell you something, and what the mainstream needs, what people need, is good economic information coming from people that are just trying to put forward good economic information. They're not trying to sell you on a product. Maybe the package, the greater package, that's the whole website, that's the network presentation. There's something being sold there. Even take, say, this show. I don't sell anything, but I mention the comic book shop. I talk about the fact that I own a comic book shop, and so that is, and when I do my reviews, I'll mention the comic book shop, and that's, I'm not selling anybody anything. I'm doing legitimately the service that I think is necessary, talking about the book, telling people that it's out there. They don't know about. I barely know about them, and I own a comic book shop. There's so many of them coming out that I barely know about them and can barely keep up. I would have to spend all my time keeping up with what's coming out and never reading any books and never running my store. That's how crazy it is. So being able to keep up with all of what's coming out, and to be able to talk about that with customers, and to be able to try to sell them on the thing, that's all secondary to just the having the conversation about the books being available and out there. When I talk about it, I say if you can't get a book where you're at, come hit me up and I'll try to find it for you. I don't even suggest that you should come to me first and find it. I suggest that you find it at your local comic shop, but I also realize that there are less than 2,000 comic book shops in America, and it's not necessary. There's not necessarily one in your backyard, and so the opportunity is there for me to potentially grab a customer, but it's separate from what's being told. It's not a part of. I'm not trying to sell you that at the end of it. They're two separate things, and that's different. So you go to Mises' website and they have advertisements on the website, or they ask you to join Mises, and I'm a member of Mises, and they ask you for your $60 or whatever it is a year to be a contributing member. Or they try to sell you a book or something like that. They're not selling. It's not in the article. You're not reading the article and going, by the way, hey, here's this great book. Sometimes that happens, but generally speaking, the articles are being written for the information, and that's what's so much more important. And I get that they're trying to sell this stuff out there too, but I also believe that it's obvious, and it has been for quite some time now, that when it comes to information is easy to come by, and it's easy to come by when you're looking for it, when you go looking for it. So paying somebody to tell you about something that you can just go find out about yourself is becoming an archaic thing. This idea that we have to have schooling, that we have to pay somebody thousands and thousands of dollars is going away, and that's a relatively new idea. That's not a thing that's existed throughout history. Most of history has been where you would bring somebody in as an apprentice, and they would learn and grow with the trade, with the thing they wanted to do. It wasn't about trying to find an education and to find a career path and build those. No, you already understood these things, and now education has supplanted those things. What education has become is a way to put off going and finding out who you are and getting into the businesses and getting into a career and getting into the rest of your life. And if you don't go into a career, I don't know, whatever you want to do, be a bum, I don't give a damn. Let's see. I want to point out, huge data breaches, because it's another one of these things that comes up. It's another one of these things that I'm 100% right on all the time when I talk about the manipulation and the presentation and the way it's brought to us. And this is the way it's brought to us in the media as well. It has so much to do with the media and who's putting out this information that they're supposedly suggesting is true and useful information. That's that being the point of it, that it be true and that it be useful to you, not that it's just information. There's plenty of that out there. Who cares about that? But when it's packaged as an investment, or in this case, is packaged as a way for you to be aware that some criminal activity has happened in the digital world, for instance, is very it's in this digital world where it just happens so often that we're gaslighted. We're told that we're the ones. We need to change our passwords, and we need to switch to biometrics. You need to use your thumbprint. You need to use your eyes. You need to use facial recognition, which are all completely, totally compromised systems of access into your phones and device, whatever it is. Without passwords, passwords are in your head. They can't be you can't take them out of your head. At least we don't have the ability yet. And when they do, then it's game over anyway. so it won't really matter. But your thumbprint, the police can literally just grab your thumb and put it on your phone and make you open your phone. Why? Because they can make you take your fingerprints. The courts have looked at that and said you putting your thumb down and putting your fingerprint down is not you incriminating yourself. And they've said the same thing about the phone, even though there's your words and things that you have said or done or looked at or whatever on your phone, pictures that you've taken, whatever. These are actions that you've taken, words that you've used. They're saying that the act of forcing you to open the phone is not you testifying against yourself, that it's not a Fifth Amendment protection. And that's with your face and retinal scan. Those are all going to fall into the same thing. Not to mention the fact that with high definition image, I've been telling you guys this for years. Holy crap, this happened so long ago that people were able to use images to access biometric systems because the images are of such high resolution that all you have to do is make sure that they're not entirely flat images. And the way you can do 3D images, the image themselves isn't 3D, it's just the way that AI interprets them and rolls around them. You can create a 3D face using somebody else's imagery. You can create 3D software and access anybody's phone. These deep fakes and things like that you can't tell the difference of Keanu Reeves. Do you think if you can't tell the difference that your dumbass little phone with its camera can tell the difference, with its cheap little 14 megapixel camera or whatever it is on there can tell the difference? You think that it's really that smart? You think it's that accurate? Do you think that they're offering the public a particularly safe way of opening up and accessing your phone with your face when your face can be copied and reproduced anywhere at any time? In fact, it's all the time these days. The same with your fingerprints. You know how easy it is to get your fingerprints? It would not take more than a few seconds of following the average person around to get their fingerprints or to take their picture to use one of these biometric systems. And so they tell you this. These technology guys, they tell you, oh, you need to change your passwords. Oh, there's been a data breach. Oh, you need to make sure your passwords are secure. You need to make sure that you're using biometrics. They need to make sure you're using two-factor, which two-factor is actually really good. Two-factor is the best form that you can use because it requires a outside confirmation of your attempt to access something with a regular password. And again, they can't get the password out of your head. And you know me, this happened. I lost my book after years and years and years. I lost my book for a couple of days. It fell down behind the desk and I couldn't find it. I looked around, I kept looking around for it, and so I had to replace some passwords. No big deal. But I have my book. And here's the thing about that. If you're writing down your passwords and you're using passwords, and I've suggested this over and over again over the years, that one, don't you lose it. I have it with me all the time. Years and years and years and years. I've never lost it, ever. It's never been gone. And it disappeared for a couple of days. And I immediately went through and I changed passwords, and I have two-factor authentication and sends the phone, and I confirm. And yes, it's easy. It works because I have access to everything. If you didn't have access to anything, you'd be screwed. And that's, nobody can really help with that. There's not really much that can be done with that. If you for some reason somebody gets into your accounts when you have a password, a nice complicated 16-character password that you use, then there's a bigger problem. Either there's a breach in your system and somebody's watching what you're inputting into things, or on the other end there's been, and then it's most likely on the, that's what I'm getting at, is that they continue to gaslight you. What I'm saying is that what I'm getting at is if that somebody has your password when you're using a password book, then you have bigger problems than just them accessing something. You have some sort of major security breach. Either your passbook has been compromised, or the source that you're accessing things with and you wouldn't be able to tell that if you're not running into trouble trying to access something. If the password isn't missing and you can't access it, if you try to use the password and you can't access it, and you go to find out that somebody used an image of you to access your stuff and change all your passwords, and it's a sick thing that they do, that they turn it back on the people. They say that you need to take care of things on your end, when it's almost exclusively, this being the point, almost exclusively something internal. It's something that happened internal in the company. Somebody allowed somebody access to something, and that's exactly what happened here with this Coinbase thing that just happened, and this 400 million or whatever it was that went missing. This was compromised. This was people within the system getting information, taking information from people, using that, providing information to criminals, that sort of thing. It was an inside thing, and it almost always is with this stuff. And it's just yet another example of how the press and how corporations, how people in so-called authority, and people, and here's the thing, I had to deal with this. We just got about 2 minutes left. I had to deal with this with my daughter this past week. One of her managers called her a bitch, and that you don't do that. That's not what a professional person does. And she didn't do anything about it at the time. She didn't raise this thing. What did you just call me? Right here in front of everybody, that kind of thing, which is what I suggested that you do in a case like this. Because what happens is exactly what happens here with this press, with the authorities, in the police, the government, the politicians, the lawyers, all of them. They're these authoritarian pieces of crap that want you to do what they want you to do, and they want to force you to do what you want you to do. But when they're wrong, they refuse to take any responsibility for their actions, and they gaslight you. It's these corporations with the password access, and they're compromising their internal systems, and it's the government, and it's bad managers who would call 17-year-old girls a bitch just because you're angry, not because she is, because she isn't. I can say that with great confidence. I've raised fantastic, smart, wonderful children that are hard workers, and they love to do to participate and to talk to people and be friendly with people and have a good time. They're good people, and so there's something fundamentally wrong with somebody doing that. That means they're not in control of themselves, and they're not using appropriate thing. They're not using the appropriate language and tone for the situation, and it's because it's a hectic environment, and they think they can get away with it, and they do get away with it. And because when somebody questions them about it, if they're not caught in it, they lie, and they don't accept the responsibility for themselves. We got to go. We'll catch up with you next week here on Toward Anarchy. Thank you so much.
You're listening to Toward Anarchy on the Republic Broadcasting Network.